So our webinar today, we're having a very relevant topic. You all have experience with your students and how they change through the years and the decades. And are the students less college ready today? The evidence would say so. And really talking about what we can do now. So I'd like to introduce or let our panelists introduce themselves here. We'll go across the board. First, we're going to hear from Wendy, and you can tell us who you are and your institution and how you ended up, what you were trying to solve to bring in Nearpeer last year. So, Wendy, it's on to you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Wendy Klaus. I am the Chief Strategist for Enrollment and Operations at the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. We are a 4-campus system with CU Boulder, of course, being the large campus in the system. In 2000, we were designated as the growth campus in the system because we had 22 consecutive years of increased enrollment. However, that stopped in 2019. I'm sure a lot of you know what happened in 2019. The pandemic made some changes in both student expectation and delivery. So in an attempt to change our climate, we brought in Nearpeer. We wanted to grow new enrollment. We wanted to decrease melt. We had a large top of funnel, but we weren't seeing great results at the bottom of the funnel and results for yield. We desperately needed to improve persistence and retention. Our retention had been stuck at 67% for literally 22 years. And anything we did programmatically did not seem to make that number budge. We're an interesting campus. We're an R2 as of 2006 or 2019, excuse me. We have 35% of our students as commuter students. We started off in 1965 when we were founded as primarily a commuter campus. So over the years, we have transitioned into a more traditional campus with residence halls, supporting first gen, supporting Pell recipients, have a large military affiliation, a military presence in Colorado Springs. And all of these populations have different needs. And that's one of the reasons that we launched Nearpeer.
Super. Thank you, Wendy. Looking forward to hearing more from you, and we'll hand it over to Jonathan from VCU.
Hey everyone, good afternoon or morning or hello to you, depending on your time zone. My name is Jonathan Fuller. I have the privilege of serving as the Director of First and Second Year Experiences at Virginia Commonwealth University, which is in Richmond, Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia's capital city, just about 2 hours south of Washington, D.C. VCU is a large R1 research institution. And in the Virginia public system, though we don't have the same experiences as colleagues in Colorado, for example, we are situated in a unique place, geographically even. If you go about an hour west on I-64, you enter Charlottesville, Virginia, home of the University of Virginia, one of the oldest public universities in the United States. Not to be outdone, if you go about an hour east on I-64 from VCU's campus, you hit the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. And so for a school that was also founded in its current form in the mid-1960s, we are the baby of Virginia's public institutions. But we are trying our best to lead the way in terms of making the best of what a research university has to offer accessible to anyone who's interested in it. We pride ourselves on being an accessible institution with amazing programs, undergraduate and graduate programs in arts and sciences, all sorts of professional majors. We serve a really unique and diverse slice of not just Virginia's, but primarily Virginia's population, of about 40% of both first generation and Pell eligible students, and are working with students who are really interested in a college degree and college experiences that can help them carve a new path for their families. And so for us, Nearpeer I'll talk a little bit more about this in a few minutes, but Nearpeer kind of fell into our lap as an opportunity for us to say, hey, how can we get students connected to each other? How can we think about the social dynamic of our campus, which is large? Our incoming first year class this year is looking to be right around 4,600 new first year students on top of about 15 to 1,600 transfer students. And navigating our urban campus with in the midst of that many people can be challenging. And so we were asking a lot of social questions, and certainly this is coming from a space for us for questions about student success and retention metrics in particular. But we were particularly interested in what Nearpeer could offer our students in terms of an opportunity to connect with and build those relationships with one another. So I'm excited to share a little bit more about VCU, our campus, and our experiences with Nearpeer. It's good to be with you all.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Jonathan. And next, Tanya from University of St. Thomas.
Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be here today to chat about student experience and retention and student success and all of that great stuff. Again, my name is Tanya Jones-Peterson. I'm the Director of Retention and Student Success at the University of St. Thomas, which is in St. Paul, Minnesota. We have 3 campuses, St. Paul being our largest, and we also have a campus in Minneapolis as well as Rome. I've never gotten the opportunity to go to Rome, but I hope that I will sometime. We're a 4-year private Catholic institution, and I think it's helpful to have a little bit of a context of understanding our institution as we go through our presentation and this webinar today. We are, very traditional in terms of age. So about 99% of our students are 19 years of age or younger. We have a 2-year residency requirement. 98% of our students are full-time students. We have about 1/4 of our students are first-generation college students, and about 1/3 of our students are economically disadvantaged. And one fun fact about the University of St. Thomas is that we're the first institution to go from Division III to Division I in college athletics. So we're really excited about that here at our institution. My job is really to serve our 4-year undergraduate student population. So again, in my title, it's retention and student success. I'm looking at ways to really hone in on one of our core convictions, which is personal attention. And I think Nearpeer fits really well with that. And we've been able to leverage that in a way to really support our students here at St. Thomas. So I'm excited to have these conversations and learn from my fellow panelists.
Great. All right. Thank you so much, Tanya. And one of our attendees has raised their hand in the system. If you do have questions, I want to say now, use the Q&A function. And we've got Tom Deshane on our team and Christy Rice from our team who will field those questions while the webinar is going on. And at the very end, we'll also have plenty of time for questions then. So use that Q&A function. And if you use the chat, that's only going to go to the panelists and Tom and Christy as well. So use that Q&A function on your Zoom toolbar down below. So it's so great to hear the different types of institutions that we have on today. And I think one of the key things we know that the full spectrum of institutions is represented on this call, from 2-year colleges through to large public universities, faith-based institutions, private colleges. And with Nearpeer and the focus of our topic today, sense of belonging, this is a real human problem. It's not an institutional specific problem. So I thought these perspectives would be very valuable for all to share. I do want to say that in addition to that, sometimes people wonder about this. The folks that are here, Tanya, Wendy, and Jonathan, they're here as volunteers. They just want to share their experiences around this topic. And with Nearpeer, sometimes people think, oh, they must have been paid to be here. I hope it went without saying, but I know it's come up as a question in the past. So thank you all for taking the time today and leading up to this webinar, for being here today. Ultimately, we need to talk about this issue of students being less ready for college. I think that students being less ready for college, it fits a number of domains. It's academically, socially, and emotionally. This is a big challenge for students today. There are a lot of pressures that have caused this on the academic side. We have a demographic cliff that we're all looking at and worried about. But with that demographic cliff, the reality is that the general student profile is changing as well. We have more first-gen students than ever. And with that, they don't have necessarily the family support that knows about this process. They have not been preparing for college their whole lives necessarily. So those forces are causing a real challenge on the academic side. And that includes on the social side for those first-gen students and others, this idea of imposter syndrome, having lived through the pandemic as adolescents, and the negative consequences of social media that are coming to the forefront today. These have impacted these students in a meaningful way, and they are ready to move beyond those challenges overall. We also know that mental health and wellness is really at a crisis overall. We see from reports from places like the American College of Health, the ACHA, the annual reports show how much is happening here with adjustment disorders, anxiety and depression, and of course this core loneliness that we're trying to counter with sense of belonging. A healthy sense of belonging is a powerful magic tool. It helps students overcome problems in all three of those domains. And I think that's why sense of belonging is central to what we're doing today. And everybody sort of has known about this. When you think about Vince Tinto and belonging, but there's a lot of research that's going on right now. There's a lot of academic research by a variety of authors identifying belonging as a critical need for students on so many levels. In fact, there have been two books written just in the past 5 years about the impact of sense of belonging for college students. So I recommend both of these books that you see here for full spectrum investigation about it. But ultimately, the question is, what can you do about it? What can you do about it? There are lots of things out there that are interventions that all of you are trying, and I think that Nearpeer is one very powerful tool. It's easy, it's a fun tool that students really like, and ultimately what happens, it builds a healthy sense of belonging for students across their journey. I think this is very important that this journey starts with students when they're in high school. Some people take themselves out of the college mix before they even leave high school. They just don't consider themselves college material. And they need support, and peer support is a big part of that. When people know that other people with whom they identify are going through the same process, it changes student behaviors, and that's what's important before college, just before arriving, once you've committed to a college, when choosing a college. But it also helps you navigate resources. People feel comfortable asking their peers, where do I go for help? Persistence, retention, graduation, these are the ultimate goals overall. So with that, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, belonging right in the center of that. And this is what it's about. You can do interventions that increase belonging. They have persistent effects. Even if they happen early, interventions that happen early have persistent effects that allow students to become self-actualized and successful in college. And that's why we built Nearpeer. Nearpeer is a solution that takes what is known in the science of belonging, and we built something that helps students feel connected, feel more confident, feel a sense of community. And we do this through our platform on the web or in an app that lets students create a profile using 2,500 different variables, whatever they want to put in about themselves, their affinities, their likes, their interests, their hobbies. They can put in basically as many of those as they want. And our algorithms within Nearpeer show them the students with whom they share a lot in common, hometowns, majors, all of those sorts of things. And it makes it very easy to connect. And this is one of the challenges students coming out of COVID adolescents have a hard time initiating new contacts and some fear of being judged. This lowers all of those hurdles for them. It's digital, yes, but we flip that model. Our goal is to have students have real life friendships, connections, study buddies, roommates. We want it to start in the digital world, and they get that this turns into real human connection. That is a key difference to what we do. It's built with ethical design principles. There are no ads, there's no anonymity. It's a healthy environment. We have a lot of impact for all students, near peers for all students, but we have outsized impact on our priority populations. This is really important with that changing demographic. Why Nearpeer makes a difference? These connections and belonging. Man, when you feel connected, you feel more comfortable. Anxiety goes down, is key. The connection to resources. There's places here where financial aid can have a channel to talk to students and answer questions in real time. We see the use of resources goes up with Nearpeer. It drives commitment to what students want. We're in a season right now, for those who are in admissions, where students are getting poached away by other institutions. But when your students feel connected to each other, they're much, much less likely to leave even before they enroll. So I think this is an important takeaway. We work with lots of institutions. I think this is some of our partners that you see here. Everyone on the call has a peer institution out there, I'm sure. But we also work with other entities like the Lumina Foundation, which funded our work at one of our institutions, Mindful College Connections in Indiana, that is focused on mental health, and they have multiple schools who are participating through their generosity. The College Success Foundation in the state of Washington. A lot of attention is being brought to Nearpeer, and I think this is why our panelists are here today. They want to share innovation. They want to share what they know so it has more impact on more students across the board. Okay. Next, we're going to go into the University of Colorado's, kind of a laser focus on them, and Wendy, and what you've done there with Nearpeer, how you use Nearpeer changes across institutions, but persistence, melt, academic performance are some of the pieces there. We're going to see a lot of data as we go, and I think that hearing the student voices, these are from the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. Hearing the student voice is so important. These are from surveys that we just did. The students love to respond to the survey, which is great. The response rate to our surveys is very, very high. And here are some of their comments that we know we're achieving our goals. It helped me build my confidence. I've bonded with others. We do things and can't wait to hang out in real life. People are, open about their anxiety in going to a new school. So for transfer students, for example. So here's some of that was feedback directly from University of Colorado, and we'll hear more from the other institutions as well. But at this point, I'm going to hand it over to you, Wendy, and you can talk about whatever you'd like to talk about, your experiences with Nearpeer and your students.
Thank you, Christopher. We have had a phenomenal experience so far with Nearpeer, but I want the data, of course, the outcomes, the quantitative outcomes can speak for themselves. I have a couple slides that show what successes we've had with Nearpeer, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the underlying framework that helped us adopt this tool. We know enrollment management professionals, they know that academic preparation is one of the primary factors in student success, or so we thought from Tinto 1970s all the way up to 2019, 2020. It suggested that if students arrived in college academically ready, retention challenges, those would be significantly reduced. I want to challenge that assertion a little bit today, because I want to say that entering college is profoundly liminal. It's experience where students are not simply transitioning from one academic level to another, high school to college, or two-year school to a four-year school. But they're stepping into that space between adolescence and adulthood, where expectations shift dramatically. So we are asking 18 to 24-year-olds to reorient their lives completely around a learning experience that society has framed as foundational to their future quality of life. That's a pretty big ask, don't you think? When you think about it in those terms, we expect them to engage with the maturity of adults, even though they're still in critical stages of neurological development. Our students are navigating these intense social and cultural pressures to belong, which can challenge their sense of identity, especially in college, when they're going from a small scope, a high school, a family background into this institution of learning. Nearpeer really helps in this space because it demonstrates as people, we're not moving through that transition alone. There's a community out there that values individual passions, right? So we see that list of interests and contacts in those Nearpeer results. And we're saying, okay, it's not just the dogs as the top interest, but there is a comprehensive list from A to Z. So it's telling students, it's telling prospective students that there is a community out there, that this is a safe place for questions and exploration. More importantly, a space where they can be unapologetically themselves, which is the core to belonging. We can't make a student belong. They can transition so we belong to them. There's a nuance there. It builds their community, their confidence, right? And it's not just learning that disciplinary canon that's an important part of college. It's learning the resilience and how to transition from one space to another.
Wendy, when you brought up the extensive interest list, it made me think about the more offbeat interests that people have that are important to them. Like in Colorado, maybe there's a lot of people who like skiing, let's say, but there might be some people who like something like crocheting or Dungeons and Dragons or some other slightly offbeat thing. So the idea of building micro community, when you find those people, it's very powerful. Does that resonate with you? Is that something that you think is part of the power?
Absolutely, Christopher. I think we've all been in that space at one time or another where we've gone into a new situation and we think we're the only one that feels this way and no one is like us. No one else likes to crochet or knit or LARP, whichever one that is. We maybe like different music. So we don't have anything in common to talk about. But for those of you who are my age, think about the Breakfast Club, right? It brought 5 different people together in an environment where they could discover similarities between them and make connection. I'm not a proponent of John Hughes films. I know that they are not correct anymore. But those of us who grew up in the 80s, we saw that experience. And we all feel that. Even when you go to a conference as a PhD, there's a little bit of that anxiety that builds. So this is home before hello, right? This is I know that there's at least one other person who's going to LARP with me in the student common areas.
And from your campus, I know you have examples of how people did find each other. So the real human side that we keep coming back to. Do you want to share, any of those?
Absolutely. So we have a farm adjacent to campus, and often have farmers market. And we were there, the team was there kind of looking around, and we heard two students talking. They were meeting for the first time in real life. And we asked, how did you meet? And they said, well, we met on Nearpeer, and we decided that this was a good space to come meet in person. So we're seeing that all over campus. We recently have what I'm going to call the Spice Girl experience that happened at this orientation event just weeks ago. We had an out-of-state student from Texas who had been chatting with an in-state student from Colorado Springs, so a local. They had been chatting back and forth quite a bit. The out-of-state student from Texas also connected with another in-state student. So there were three of them. Tons of conversation, back and forth chats. They decided that their first in real life meeting would be at this orientation batch. They met, and you would think that they had been best friends for 10 years at least, that they grew up together. And they were so excited for the orientation. The one came in from Texas just temporarily to meet those other two individuals. So when you see things like that, it lights up the room, and you know that regardless of the quantitative outcomes, which we've had tremendous success, especially in persistence between near-peer users and non-users, that it's making a difference in students' lives.
That's terrific. And so those connections that are happening there, as you just said, they're making a difference in student enrollment overall. Yeah, here are some of the data on the screen for people to see and read. I think we've got a summary of it here as well. Tell us about how you decided to look at this and what your findings were overall, Wendy.
We decided to look at this from a pretty conservative view. We're resource constrained, and with falling enrollments post-COVID, we've had to ensure that we see return on investment for all of the tools that we implement. But we can look at that through a student success lens. So, of course, we compared near-peer users to non-near-peer users in both incoming populations of transfer students and first-year students. We saw, of course, the first thing you always measure is yield. 95% of the students who adopted Nearpeer prior to the first day of class showed up for class. So that's a huge testament to its ability to limit melt. We wanted to look at, of course, retention. We wanted to look at academic success as a measure of confidence. But what I found that was really fascinating was the first-year students who did not have a first semester that we would think or we would classify as academically successful. If they were a near-peer user, they enrolled again at 16.29 percentage points higher, not percent change, but that's the gap, than the non-users. So that indicates to me that the confidence and community that students are getting is really helping with resilience. that maybe they have peers that are telling them, yeah, everybody has a bad semester, but it's okay, as part of that social norming thing.
Great. Very interesting. And Jonathan and Tanya, I don't know if this might be the first time you're seeing this data. Do you have reaction or questions of Wendy about what you've heard?
Not necessarily questions. I just want to, give them a shout out for the great work and the like really diving into the data and showing that return on investment can go a long way to when we have resource constraints. But at the end of the day, what really resonates with me with what Wendy is saying, and I know what Jonathan will say in a little bit, is just at the end of the day, I think probably most of us who are on this call are here, because we care about our students, and I love this qualitative narrative that Wendy shared and all of those connection points. That's really important, and I know that's why I do the work that I do. But I love the balance of both of those things, showing both the data that we need to show, but also that human connection is powerful.
Good. Thank you, Tanya. All right. So for the participants in this webinar today, all three of these schools were in your shoes just about a year ago. Last year, the fall of 24 was the first group that Nearpeer was used, I think, at all three of these schools. And in year two, we're seeing an even greater engagement with Nearpeer as you've learned about this. So these are some of the findings from Colorado Springs, University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. Wendy, what did you do differently going into year two?
It really started with the end of year one. So the closing of the first term. At the end of the first term, I was curious to know if there were students in Nearpeer who had not made any connections and had not joined any groups. So we pulled those students out as candidates for intervention. We were able to use some student employees to make connections, able to put them into some relevant student groups so they would have, I guess I want to say, there's that sense of community.
Yeah.
So that, I think, has been a huge tool. We will use Nearpeer as an early alert as we go into next semester a lot earlier, rather than waiting till the close to the end after midterms. We will start before to identify those students and make early intervention. We've also tried to eliminate some of the barriers. So we had a lot of student groups set up, which were difficult to keep track of for our staff. We consolidated those. And so we're seeing a much greater amount of interaction, and also greater amount of one-to-one chat messages, because that group setting is spurring individual questions. So I believe that they're chatting about that.
That's terrific. And we have some chat examples that we can share offline, anonymized chat examples. It's really amazing what the students are chatting about. And I want to say, I think all the panelists would be happy to hear from all of you. I'll ask them after this, and if they say, okay, we'll share their emails if you have questions of Wendy or the others. There's so much to talk about. So let's share those after the webinar. And now let's move on and hear a little bit more from Tanya and St. Thomas specifically. Tanya, you're on. Thank you, Wendy.
Yeah, so I just, I'll share a little bit about our project. And one of the things at St. Thomas that we're really trying to do, so I work in retention and student success. I report to student affairs and academic affairs. But on this particular project, we collaborated with folks in enrollment management, right? Because this is, for us, was about MELT and then about retention. So we'll have our first numbers really after the 10th day of the term. So tune back in September, but we're feeling pretty optimistic about that. In addition to that, we also had colleagues from ITS and student affairs, so like our orientation and registration folks who were involved in this as well. And so it was really, you know, as we look at, you know, my area, which is around retention and graduation, we can't do that. We can't do retention and graduation work without really, you know, supporting our colleagues as folks are trying to bring students into the institution. So our view is really that it's everyone's job to enroll students. It's everyone's job to retain students and graduate them, right? So that's kind of our approach. Our utilization of Nearpeer as a tool is part of our comprehensive retention strategy at the university. We are blessed to have pretty high retention rates. You know, we're hovering between 86 and 88% for our first year fall retention rates, but we're trying to find those ways to make those incremental improvements. And so for us, really, the adoption of this tool was to first help with MELT. We didn't, you know, we didn't know what we were getting into. We didn't know how easy it was going to be. We worked with Christy, and she is fantastic. Really, the rollout was quite simple. We used it with our confirmed students, and we're just seeing a lot of really great results right out of the gates. And I think the strength of this tool is really looking at how do students these days like to engage, and they feel more comfortable in that kind of app-like environment. So it really does meet students where they're at. I think like the MELT stuff is very exciting for us. I think as we look at, you know, trying to make those improvements with retention, with our retention rates, we know where our areas of opportunity are, and they're, you know, for our historically marginalized students and our international students. And we're just seeing how this tool has really helped us minimize or reduce the MELT with those students. And then I'm sure I'll be able to come back and talk about the retention rates as well early in the fall. But those are some of the exciting things. And in my role, I know there's a slide on this, but in my role, really, I'll tell you, we're a data-rich institution. We have lots of great data. And my thing, you know, that sticks to me from my graduate work is always, it's a so what factor of the data. What are you going to do with this? So really, my job is to leverage the data that we have, that we can glean from, you know, this and other projects. And this just shows a couple of our examples that I think it's always helpful to see, you know, how do you actually implement this? How do you actually use this? Dogs were our number one thing on our campus. So I tell you, when I say we hit the dogs hard, we hit the dogs hard. So we have dog events all over the place. I don't know if anyone works in the student success area or like student success centers. It's hard to get people to go to study events of any type, but you know, you add some therapy dogs and you get 112 students coming and engaging in your space. And also for us, it is about, okay, so maybe they did come for the dogs, but then they got to hear about our resources and other things that we have on our campus and see our space where our academic counseling, our research offices, our pre-health professions advising, all of those things are kind of in that space. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And then, like I said, my colleagues in different areas, our Dean of Students office has dogs and deans on one Friday a month. And this is really just helping, you know, again, with where our students are at. And we like it. And then boba tea. One of the exciting things is we have study skills workshop. I do a check-in survey every year. And one of the things 6 weeks into the term that our new students say is, you know, one of my concerns, I need help with study skills and test taking skills. So we offer workshops and nobody comes. We literally had zero students there. We leveraged the insights we gleaned from Nearpeer, and we rebranded, same event, same time, same date, day of the week. And we went from 0 students to 14 students and then continued on. So it is really about finding finding the uniqueness of your students, and each cohort is different. We're finding different insights with this newer cohort, but finding that, and then as Wendy and Christopher talked about earlier, I mean, this is about how do you leverage these data insights, you know, for programmatic purposes. But I think the biggest strength is finding those connections with those obscure and different interests, where, like Wendy shared earlier, just that those connections with things where you don't think you're going to be able to find someone else at your institution that likes the same things. But that again is where I think Nearpeer really shines, and shines for us at our institution.
That's really helpful. I love the dogs and bubble tea examples here. Those are really terrific examples. So I'm curious, in these times, a lot of administrators and leaders feel like their teams are overstretched and it's difficult. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like to launch Nearpeer? You know, how quickly that happened, and you know, were there constraints, or you know, or was it easy for you to ultimately do with all the things that are going on?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, you know, I was kind of prepared for that question, actually. I did engage with our ITS. You know, strong partnerships across campus are always helpful for folks in my role. I engaged with our enrollment management team, as well as our ITS team, to get their sense. Because for me, I'm like, this was easy. And they really echoed that, that commentary. We did meet as a group just quite frequently, actually, just as an internal St. Thomas group, just as we were launching this. And we probably didn't need to meet as much as we did, because it really, you know, was an easy product to launch for us. And I think, you know, the hardest thing, and it wasn't even hard, was just really getting that list, working with our banner team to get our lists, because we used our confirmed student list. So that was the most challenging. And by most challenging, I'm here to tell you it was easy.
That's great. That's excellent. And well, again, there'll be time for questions at the end. So if people have questions, chat them into the Q&A, and we'll answer them as they come up. And I thought it would also be helpful to hear from an actual St. Thomas student. We don't want to hear from all the schools at once, but here's a St. Thomas student talking about what this means to them. Because I think one of the power of this is really around the students sort of get it. They've got access to all sorts of platforms and things, but they want to be in here to do this. So let's listen to this student quickly.
They said was a place to like meet people before you got on campus. And I'm like, oh, this seems like a really cool idea to try and meet people and kind of make friends before you actually get on campus. I was able to make a friend, and then we met up during welcome week and hung out for a while. The Nearpeer app actually suggested I connect with this person because we had a lot of like similar interests chosen. So we decided to chat for a bit, and we had like a few video calls like afterwards, like played some video games together. And then during welcome week, like we did the late night at the ASC together. It has allowed me to connect with people and kind of start to branch out and try to make some friends. So that way when you're during that first few weeks when it's busy, you're still adjusting to college life or something, you sort of already have a friend group that you can, who is going through the same thing, that you can kind of like talk to and work through it together. You already have something in common with everyone, that you're going to St. Thomas, and then you could find people in your same major or similar interests, so you can actually have a personal and tangible connection with them.
So,
and they said,
well, thank you, Tanya. We'll move on so we can get to the Q&A, and we'll give Jonathan some time now to talk about VCU. You can see some of the background here as we go. But Jonathan, please dive in, and I'll advance the slides in a moment.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we finished where we did with Tanya's portion around the ease of the lift, because I think that's a huge part of the story of Nearpeer at VCU. So I'm actually about just over a year into my role in student success. I had served in a role in student leadership development in our Division of Student Affairs previously. So not totally new to VCU, but new to our division that houses both enrollment management and student success. And a few weeks in, my boss, our AVP for Student Success, and I got outreach from one of our colleges here at VCU saying, hey, we've used this platform called Nearpeer, but we've decided not to use it for our specific program that we had accessed it for. We were wondering if the university would be interested in this overall. And so this point was probably about this time last year, if I'm being honest. It was probably sometime early to mid-July, getting close to the start of the semester. And we decided, you know what, in conversation, let's go for it. So, Tom or Christopher, why don't you go ahead to the next slide because I think this is really important. During this time of transition, we recognized, okay, when are we actually going to get this going? And as we got started and we're able to get things on board, which is an easy process, we were just facing a time crunch to the start of the semester. So, working with Christy, we decided to send out 3 emails to our new students, incoming first year and transfer students. Those emails were templated. I made some adjustments to, be a little bit more fitting to my voice and our context, but ultimately just sent out those invitations saying, hey, here's this opportunity. Here's some information about it. Watch this quick video. And we saw more than 25% of our new students adopt it right at truly during the first week of the fall semester. So unfortunately, in our first year, we don't have the experience of working with yield or efforts to reduce melt, making some of those connections early on. But the moment that we were able to meet was this moment that I think socially for students can be some of the most anxiety inducing of their experience as they're getting started. So during their first semester, we were trying to check in at a few key points to see how Nearpeer was interacting. We recognized early on that the kind of the swath of our students that sample essentially was pretty representative of our first year class. So we wanted to pay attention to some key markers throughout the semester. We have an early alert system. We're about 3 weeks into our semester. Every faculty member issues functionally the equivalent of as they would be expected to issue a midterm grade. They issue an early alert, either saying, hey, you're doing a great job, or identifying, hey, this student hasn't come to class yet, or they seem to be struggling with writing, or maybe if it's an online course, they haven't logged into the LMS site yet, those kinds of things. So we have this early alert system that's already connected to a number of our resources, and we were really interested, where do near-peer users fall in this side of things? And so both during that early alert system, alert experience, we noticed that students were not only less likely to have received an early alert, they were also more likely to reach out and schedule an appointment with a relevant office to get help if they had received an early alert. We're noticing a similar pattern with midterm grades. Fewer midterm grades of D and F, and for those who did have those, especially for those who had multiples of those, more likely to reach out and get the help that they need. At the end of our first semester, we noted that students who used Nearpeer were more likely to have a higher GPA at the end of their first semester, and that particularly among our first year students. And we noticed the most significant differences among kind of the bottom quartile of those too, that there may have been some areas of engagement that may have supported some of our students for whom getting a good grade in a class was a bit more of a struggle potentially, or it required a little bit of extra support. And so we were excited to see those outcomes. And just recently, actually just this week in preparation for this conversation, we took a first look at what the impact was looking at retention for this coming fall, our fall to fall 1 year retention rate. And of course, as was already suggested, this definitely could change, but we're seeing close to 2 percentage points difference, 2 full percentage points difference in retention rate for students who used an increase among students who used Nearpeer during their first year compared to those who did not. And we're seeing this rate being pretty consistent across some of the key demographic groups and priority groups that we try to prioritize as we're doing a lot of data analysis on our campus, from Pell eligible students, first generation students, other underrepresented groups, and other groups whose success we're interested in. But that also applies, this rate is not only applying across most of those groups, but is applying to the whole student population. We're also doing some analysis based on some of our work that we do in our intake survey processes related to primarily academic readiness, and we're noticing benefits across the board for those students as well. So I say all this to say, we saw that impact with sending out 3 emails. I know there was a bit more work to do with that, but if lift around getting started here is something that you're concerned about, even with a really crunched time frame and a less than ideal time to be launching like some of this, we still saw impact that we're really excited about. And so now coming back this summer, you can see here some of our priorities and strategies so far around what we're experiencing so far. We're actively partnering with our Office of Orientation and Transition programs so that as students are coming to campus for our nearly dozen first year student orientation sessions and several transfer sessions, they're getting welcome emails that part of which includes an invitation to join Nearpeer. It's in the logistics session of orientation at the start. I mentioned it in my presentation. So we're seeing already our usage has surpassed that we achieved last fall semester in our first month of working with and onboarding chunks of students slowly over the course of the summer. We are quickly seeing those connections start to form, and we've been really intentional trying to strategize how can we use Nearpeer as a tool during orientation, even thinking about using it for orientation leaders to communicate with students in their orientation groups, but also letting it kind of be the launching point for these kinds of connections to take shape. And so again, I'd say we do have some quantitative pieces. The one qualitative thing that I'll mention goes back to those interests. I love the dogs, the boba tea. Some of our interests among our students were, I'll say, a little bit more unique. For whatever reason, I know last fall our number 4 interest was not just watching movies, but it was horror movies specifically. So we haven't developed any horror related programming just yet, although it continues to be an interest this year too. But one thing that we did do, noticing a strong population of our students being interested in Dungeons and Dragons and those kinds of role-playing games, I actually partnered with a couple of professionals who work in our campus learning center and our uh, Office of Residential Life and Housing, and they developed a Dungeons and Dragons themed student success course that is now a special topic among our few dozen topics that are in those kind of introductory first year seminar courses that in the program I help administer. And so this data is not just showing us how we can be more successful as a university. It is doing that, and it's showing us how these connections are working. Like's already been suggested by my colleagues and my fellow panelists. It is showing us how students are directly impacted by the opportunity to make these kinds of connections that help sustain them through what can be a really difficult transition. We're finding that social transition to be really challenging. It was challenging before the pandemic, but now we feel like the opportunities lost to many of these students during peak formative years around their ability to interact socially is just making the challenges a little bit different than those that we faced in the past. And offering this step to eliminate that initial barrier of finding someone to connect and chat with is such a huge asset. And we're seeing the benefits for our university. We're excited to keep digging in and see the benefits for our students specifically too.
Terrific. Thank you, Jonathan. That was a fantastic summary there. And some of the questions that are coming in are around how quickly can Nearpeer launch? Because you just said you started last year at this time. It still is possible. Get a hold of Tom on our team, and don't wait. You don't need to wait till next year. Get some impact today, learn something, and then we can launch within a matter of days, literally. So I think that's an important piece here. We do want to get to the questions. If you take some time and set a meeting with us, we can tell you about our randomized control trial with Cal State Northridge, like a clinical trial to absolutely isolate the impact of Nearpeer. We'll do that when we meet all together, but we do want to get to the Q&A sessions, and I'm going to put up a second poll if you do want to meet with us. We'll do that. But as the questions come in, we'll answer them here in our last few minutes together. So we saw some questions on time to launch. We saw a question on IT security of Nearpeer. It's a closed environment. It's not integrated unless you'd like it to be integrated with your systems. So it's very, very secure, and the students who are allowed in is controlled by you. So this is if you're at Colorado Springs, you don't see students at St. Thomas or at VCU. You only see the students where you are, and those students have verified that they can be in. So it's a healthy, safe environment, and we can talk more about that if you want to schedule some time with us. We can have a deeper dive, show you the platform, what it really is all about. But an excellent question there. Okay, almost at the top of the hour. Um, I think we've answered some questions in the background here. I want to thank our panelists for taking the time today um, on this Wednesday afternoon to share your experiences. Very generous of you to do so. And together, we're trying to help a million more students graduate from college, graduate from university, and have the success in life that comes with all the fine work that all of you do every day. So thanks for attending the webinar to our attendees. And just reach out to us with any questions you have, and I'll check with the panelists to see if I can share their email addresses if you want to know some of the things that they've learned along the way and share those best practices. So thanks to all. We will see you soon and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye now.